Hello, people. Thank you for coming back for episode 2 of Fat Guys and Friends podcast. No friends yet, but we've got many requests from friends wanting to come on the show, so I'm sure there will be friends in the future. But for today, just the Fat Guys. I'm Logan Wenger, joined by my good friend and fellow fan, Colton Bartholomew. How you doing, Bart?
Wang!
Oh, I'm excited.
As am I.
Coming up, we're going to revisit that awesome AJ Styles John Cena promo from Raw last week. We're going to chat a little bit about what's next for Finn Balor after NXT TakeOver the End last night. And Bart wants to rant about NFL players shooting themselves.
Stop it! Stop doing that.
But first... Why?
Shooting yourself is just bad business, man. We'll get into it.
Yeah, you're right. But first, how about those NBA Finals? LeBron James finally had a LeBron James caliber game, 32 points, 11 rebounds, 6 assists. But more importantly, he got help finally. Kyrie Irving finally wasn't a missing person in the finals, showed up scoring 30 points. But not only that, might have played the best defense of his life last night. J.R. Smith, who had just 8 points in the first 2 games of the series, erupts for 20. But the player of the game last night for me was Tristan Thompson, 14 points and 13 rebounds. Doesn't sound like a lot, but he was throwing Draymond Green around like a rag doll. And on the Golden State side, Klay Thompson left with a quad contusion, but came back to score only 10 points. We still haven't seen that first ever unanimous MVP show up very much. He scores 19 points last night, but it was a very quiet 19 points. So, Bart, after watching Cleveland win by 30 last night, does it change anything for you?
I think the only thing it changes is that it shows that the Cavaliers' attempt at trying to switch every screen of the Warriors can work for stretches. But in all honesty, I give the Cavs a lot of credit for, actually, executing those switches and creating some turnovers with ball pressure. But this was really just a case of making shots versus missing shots. The Cavaliers made all their open shots, ended up shooting 48% as a team after shooting less than 40% the first 2 games. And the Warriors shot 27.3% from 3. That's not a Warriors game. That's just an off night.
Yeah, that's not going to keep up. The Warriors are going to make their shots eventually. It's how they won 73 games in the regular season. It's how they came back from a 3-1 deficit against the Thunder last series.
Exactly.
They're going to make their shots.
And, as well as the Cavs D played, like I said, they actually communicated all those switches, and they were actually getting a lot of ball pressure, tipping the ball away, getting turnovers, and then when you get turnovers, you get LeBron on the fast break, and that's, always an easy basket for whatever team he's on. But the Warriors are still able to get a lot of open shots. Klay Thompson, like you mentioned, got hurt a little bit, but had open shots he was just missing. They were getting that 3 from the high pick and roll. They were getting the 3s from the driving kicks. They were just missing them. And when they're missing their 3s, everything else starts falling off for them, including the Warriors defense. And when they're open, they were open at times. They were just missing them, and that's how you get a 30-point blowout. Another blowout. The NBA can't be liking this.
No, Adam Silver can't be very happy. The product doesn't look very good.
No,
people want a close game.
Yeah, it's the 2 teams everybody wanted to see get in a rematch and be as healthy as possible. Obviously, Kevin Love didn't play last night, but that didn't seem to matter. But you've got 3 games, and you've got 3 blowouts, with the closest one being 15.
I don't think Adam Silver wants to see Ian Clark going against Mo Williams with 3 minutes left in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, that's not exactly compelling television.
But getting back to Klay Thompson for a little bit, did you see that he said the play where he got hurt was dirty by Mozgov, where he set a screen in the lane?
Yeah, I mean, as a guy that has played the 5 position before, when you stick your knee out like that, you know what you're doing.
Do you think it was dirty?
Yeah. You don't stick your knee out like that if you're not trying to catch a guy. Because you want him to hit your chest to actually get a good screen. If you're trying to, nick a guy up, you toss your knee out there. Trust me, I've done it intentionally a lot of times.
Maybe they were finally going with the Charles Barkley strategy where you got to take one of them out.
Yeah. It kind of worked.
And then he came back and, like I said, only scored 10 points, so something might have worked. If you're Tyronn Lue, what do you do with Kevin Love?
It is going to be really tough to look at that team that just blew out the Warriors by 30 and the rotations that they used and everything, and then say, "Oh yeah, guys, we're going to put Kevin Love back in."
I don't see
What
any
you
way
had,
he can
let's
start
ignore
him.
it. I'm with you. Their biggest problem when they put the majority of their bench unit in is that they don't have guys that can score on their own. It's got to be either Kyrie or LeBron in there facilitating everything. And if you put Kevin Love on that bench unit, those minutes that LeBron's out, which granted he plays, almost 40 minutes a game anyway, so there's not a ton of minutes available, but those minutes can just be taken over offensively like Kevin Love, and then hope whoever is in for the Warriors bench doesn't destroy him defensively.
But you got to assume if he's coming off the bench, hopefully you're getting maybe Draymond Green on the bench too, so he doesn't have to try and cover Draymond Green running all over the place.
Yes, definitely, and potentially, Kevin Love would be matched up with somebody like Mo Spates, who is doing okay, but he's not quick enough to keep up with Kevin Love on a consistent basis.
Does the 30-point blowout change anything for you? So for the series outlook, do you think the Cavs have a chance of coming back now?
I really don't. I honestly think this is a combination of the Cavs being a do-or-die game, having LeBron James, and as you accurately called on Podcast 1, it was a 30-point game for LeBron and a big blowout. It was just the Warriors weren't good last night. They immediately go down by 9. The Cavs have all the momentum, and it never really seemed to get closer. I think it got down to 8 at halftime and maybe down to 7 at one other point, but it never seemed that close. Just because every time the Warriors would respond, the Cavs ended up getting like a 6-0 run somehow. So, as well as the Cavs played last night, I think it was being at home, knowing it was pretty much do or die, and then when Klay Thompson gets nicked up in, what was it, the second quarter?
Early in the second quarter, I think.
Early in the second quarter, just kind of the Warriors folded down the tent in the third quarter as much as they do. They still had Klay and Curry out there, but they weren't doing too much, and you could kind of see on Steve Kerr's face that he was pretty much resigned to the fact that they lost that one.
I appreciate you giving me the shout-out for being the super genius that I am. I was going to be humble, but then you brought it up.
You called it, man. I mean, and you accurately put it. If the Cavs are going to win anything, it's going to be because of LeBron, and it was. But I do want to get back to what you said off the top, that the player of the game for the Cavaliers was Tristan Thompson, and you're 100% right. Tristan Thompson showed up like he did in the last finals, and then, LeBroned his way into an $82 million contract. But, like you said, 14 points and 13 rebounds, and more importantly, just not letting Draymond Green do anything he wanted like he was in Game 2. Tristan Thompson's effectiveness is all based on how many offensive rebounds he gets, how many, volleyball rebounds he gets, how often he can, keep a possession alive. And he was doing that last night, getting tip-in dunks and a couple of pick and rolls with LeBron that ended up in dunks. And he's one of the guys that seems to fire up the whole team. And then another guy that you mentioned off the top too, J.R. Smith. Apparently, remember that shooting the ball is legal.
Yeah, you're allowed to take shots, and it's actually a good thing when he takes shots.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing when he makes them. Ended up going 5 for 10 on threes, 20 points, and when the Cavaliers have that third option, they would love that third option every game to be Kevin Love, but that's just not how he's been this year. But when they have that third option, either J.R. Smith or, hell, lately it's been even Richard Jefferson sometimes, but that...
I love seeing Richard Jefferson get big minutes. They mentioned on the broadcast.
It's pretty crazy.
This was the second time he's been in the NBA Finals. The first time was with the New Jersey Nets.
And
I totally forgot he made the finals with the New Jersey Nets.
Yeah, because I think he was a rookie. And wasn't that like 2001 or 2002?
It was his first 2 years. Didn't they go back-to-back years?
Yeah, and they both lost to the Lakers. But yeah, so somewhere in the early 2000s, and here he is in 2016, starting. He started last night.
Yeah, he started and played Kevin Love. It wasn't Timothy Mozgov like a lot of people thought it would be, and it wasn't even Channing Frye, who I thought it might be.
Yeah, Another positive for the Cavs last night, Kyrie Irving finally got going. He ended up with 30 points, 16 in the first quarter. And more importantly for Kyrie, 8 assists. Doesn't happen a whole lot for him. So actually having a good game for a scoring point guard in both aspects is gotta be pretty heartening for the Cavs, just seeing him do what he can actually do as opposed to being shut down.
Yeah, the 8 assists were big because Kyrie is kind of known as a ball hog of a point guard at times.
Exactly. And looking at the Warriors a little bit, you mentioned some of the big stats. Clay and Curry didn't do a ton. Draymond came crashing back down to earth a lot because of the physicality of Tristan Thompson. But
I think Draymond only took 8 shots in the game.
yeah, because Tristan Thompson just wasn't letting him get to the rack. And when he's the only Warrior that is conscious about his three-point shooting, I feel like. If he misses his first couple, he just stops shooting them.
He realizes it's not falling.
Yeah, and that's a smart play.
Unlike Stay and Clef, who they'll just hoist it all day long.
I think the Warriors' best player yesterday, and even though it gets overshadowed because how important was your best player when you lose by 30, but Harrison Barnes, 18 and 8.
He stepped up big.
That's the best version of Harrison Barnes. That's the Harrison Barnes that's going to somehow get like $150 million from the Lakers in the summer.
He's going to get paid for being a very, very good role player.
Yeah, exactly. Surrounded by the best offense we've seen in a long time. And one of the things I thought was interesting that the Cavs were able to do finally was dribble penetration leading to layups. They've been getting a lot of dribble penetration because they have, LeBron James, obviously, and Kyrie Irving, but then they've been kicking out to a lot of threes and just breaking them. And they finally decided to attack the rim, and it completely worked out for them.
When they were kicking, and I'm going to go back to J.R. Smith for a little bit, I just love the fact that J.R. Smith will take any shot. They say that Steph and Clay never take a bad shot. I don't think J.R. Smith takes a bad shot. I mean, they're bad when they don't go in, but I don't think I've seen a guy make so many bad shots as J.R. Smith.
Yeah, for sure. Like LeBron said, I think it was in the Toronto series. It was either game 1 or game 2. He's the only guy in the team with the ultimate green light. And it's interesting when you see guys that aren't a star. J.R. Smith's never been a star, even though he has the scoring potential of a star. He's never been the star of a team. But at the same time, when he gets going, it seems to be a domino effect for the rest of the team.
Yeah, he's not a star, but he's a very important piece to almost every team he's been on.
For sure. I mean, like we mentioned, his ability to score is like any of the top flight guys. The problem is he doesn't bring it every night, as we saw in game 1, game 2. He's a streak guy, but when he's on one of his hot streaks, you've got to give him the ball and let him carry. He can carry your offense for quarters of the time.
Exactly. Do you have a prediction for Game 4? Because I don't know if we will do a podcast before Game 4.
True. Game 4 is not do or die for the Warriors, obviously, but you have to show up better than you did in Game 3.
They need to be more competitive, for sure.
Definitely. You can't go down 9-0 right away. And they only had 4 points with like 2 minutes left in the first quarter. They ended up going on a little run there. And that was one of the things I also wanted to, give the Cavs some credit for. The Warriors, as terribly as they played and as hot as Cleveland was in the first half, it was only an 8-point game at halftime. The Warriors could have came out like they seem to always do in the third quarter on a big run and made that game, right back in their favor or just put Cleveland on their heels. But it was actually Cleveland that came out early in the third, reasserted everything they were doing early, and built that lead up to 15 and just kind of never seemed to sink too much below that the rest of the game.
Yeah, I think Cleveland came out in the second half with almost the exact same intensity they came out in the first quarter and just stomped the Warriors down and didn't give them any chance of coming back, which they had to do. Can you imagine how bad the Cavs would have gotten scrutinized if the Warriors come back and the Cavs only win by 1 or 2? We would still be giving the Cavs a lot of crap.
Definitely. You can't blow 20-point leads to a team that is adept at coming back from 20-point leads. But getting back to the prediction for Game 4, the law averages somehow some time has to kick in for Steph and Clay. I mean, the Cavaliers are playing as good defense as you can, ish. They're still getting open shots. Eventually, they're gonna fall. I actually see a big game coming from Curry. He seems to really respond after he doesn't have them often, but when he has a stretch or two of bad games, like against Portland when he was out, they brought him off the bench that decisive game and ends up scoring 40 in that game that went into overtime.
The I'm back game. Ugh, I'm back. Ugh.
But I would think if this isn't a competitive game, I think it's in the favor of the Warriors.
Oh yeah. As much as I'm not a huge fan of Steph Curry, he's gonna erupt sooner or later. He's not gonna have 2 points in the first half again.
Exactly. And when
he's gonna take his shots, and they're eventually gonna fall because he is the first ever unanimous MVP.
True. You watch the Warriors as a team, offensively and somewhat defensively. When Steph and Clay aren't hitting, that affects everything because it allows the defense to be late on rotations to Steph and Clay because they're not hot, as opposed to being right on them. And when defenses have to be right on Steph and Clay, it opens up all the other motion for guys like Draymond to feed the ball around, getting easy dunks for Andrew Bogut on rolls. But when Steph and Clay are off, the defense can sag off just the slightest bit and disrupt everything else they want to do.
Exactly. So like we're saying, eventually shots are going to go down. So it sounds like you and I both think the Warriors are going to take Game 4.
I would agree with that, yep.
Well, now, as we know, the National Football League usually dominates most professional sports, even in the off-season. And I know there's a little something you'd like to get to for this off-season in particular. So I'm just going to let you take the floor on this one.
All right, I'm going to apologize preemptively for going on Stephen A. Smith style rant here, but NFL players, stop carrying guns. It is your Second Amendment right to have them and carry them. I understand all of that. My dad was an ATF officer. I'm all for it. Do whatever. But you have enough money to do whatever you want, especially a guy like Aqib Talib of my Denver Broncos, Super Bowl 50 champions. Why are you carrying your own gun? To then presumably, there's the only things that can happen when you're carrying a gun and you're not like, a law enforcement officer, is you're going to shoot somebody or you're going to shoot yourself. Something bad's going to happen, especially when you're at a nightclub and drinking to the point that in his story, he was so blacked out he doesn't remember what happened. And he came to in the hospital while he was talking to the police officers. Aqib Talib. What are you doing? He has a terrible Super Bowl. I know you watched, Logan. This guy straight up single-handedly cost us a possession that gave the Panthers a touchdown. He goes out in the second half, has to cover Ted Ginn Jr. most of the time, lets up 2 35-yard completions. Just the worst defensive player of a great defensive effort by Denver was definitely Aqib Talib. And then now in the offseason, he shoots himself 2 days before they're supposed to go to the White House to get, the weird 10-minute press conference that kind of at a certain point seemed weird. But the bigger issue here is NFL players carrying guns when they just don't have to. You can argue all day about your citizens' rights to carry guns and, the safety aspect of it. And I understand it to a point with NFL players because when you're an athlete, when you're rich, you are a target when you go in public. It's some kind of weird phenomenon that people, especially when they're drunk, try to pick on the biggest, richest, or toughest guy in a bar. But if you're an NFL player, one, you can afford a bodyguard. So do it that way. Or two, when you are part of the Players Association, if you're in an NFL city, which he was in the Dallas suburb or he was in Dallas itself, you can call the union and they will send you a car service so you don't drive drunk, and they will send you personal security that are licensed to carry guns. There is no more excuses for these guys, number one, carrying guns illegally or legally, or shooting themselves to the point where they keep talking about, oh, it's not that bad of an injury, like he's going to be okay. Awesome. Our starting cornerback has a flesh wound from a gunshot that he gave himself. But that's not how you want to start an offseason where, oh, side note, we don't have a quarterback. We got bigger issues that we don't need to add on with our cornerback shooting himself in the leg.
First off, you do have a quarterback, and his name is Mark Sanchez. So you're wrong.
Oh, man. I just keep selling myself on Mark Sanchez reverting back to first 2 years Mark Sanchez and somehow
And not butt
being good
fumble
again.
Mark Sanchez that we've seen for 6 years.
Not butt fumble Mark Sanchez. We don't want that.
I thought one funny thing that you pointed out to me is you compared Aqib Talib to Cheddar Bob, which I laughed about for too hard and too long.
Yes.
But you're right. There's no point for these NFL players to keep carrying weapons. I mean, if you have a service that can come pick you up and give you security when you're drunk, you don't need a gun. You just need more friends to party with. Can you imagine if we had that? We would abuse that all the time.
Exactly. You can't justify these decisions, especially after you saw. If this was the first time it's happened, when I'm going to compare this to the Plexico Burris thing. When that happened, everyone was like, wow, really? Plexico was carrying a gun and he shot himself? That's insane. That's really not good. And then he goes to prison for it because it was an illegal gun. How do you then, how many years later, 6, 7 years later, do the same thing?
It blows my mind. NFL players don't need guns. That's the main part of your rant, and I 100% agree.
All right, let's move on before I skip Bayless in this.
Yeah, before you get too heated and scream into your mic. We don't need that. Did you watch NXT TakeOver the end at all? I told you to, but I don't think you did.
You told me to, but I didn't get around to it. I probably should have.
I watched the entire thing.
Tell me about it. Break it
Card
down.
was very good. We won't get into all of it. If you're a true wrestling fan, you need to watch Austin Aries and Shinsuke Nakamura. Nakamura is the man. That guy is going to do not just things in NXT. I think when the brand split comes, he's going to get drafted, and he's going to do stuff on either Raw or SmackDown. I can't wait for that. But the main event was Finn Balor and Samoa Joe for the 4th time since December for the NXT title. And it felt like a very old-school rivalry where there was a huge build, and then they finally added a stipulation, like the good old days where you should do that, where they don't just have a gimmick pay-per-view and they're like, hey, it's Money in the Bank, fight in a ladder. Come on. Give us something real. And even in the feud, there was blood in the last match. I mean, albeit really? it was accidental blood, but yeah. Joe bled a lot. But there was a really cool spot in the match where they're up on it was a steel cage match, and Joe is up on the top rope, and Balor's trying to climb out, and Joe is a 282-pound man, and he jumps off the top turnbuckle, kicks Balor in the back, and they both fall down. Which is just a crazy spot to see for a near 300-pounder. Joe would eventually win the match with a muscle buster from the second rope after Finn was trying to escape. Now, one would think that Mr. Finn Balor is on his way to the main roster. What do you do with him once he gets there?
Yeah, this is his 3rd unsuccessful challenge to Samoa Joe's title. And with the brand split coming, which, if you're not into wrestling, the brand split is when Raw and SmackDown, the 2 main wrestling shows, are going to be both live and have independent rosters. So one wrestler will stay on one show and others will go to other ones.
It's them trying to recreate the Monday Night War, which will never happen, but they'll try.
Yeah, essentially. They're trying to... They've figured out with their advertising and their TV people that the only thing that they can do is have live shows because as SmackDown has been taped for the last probably 8, 9 years, 10 years.
Forever.
It just the ratings have just swiftly declined, and they kept moving around stations trying to catch on somewhere. It just never really did. But getting back to Finn Balor, this dude is incredible. You mentioned it, just one of the best guys that's come out of NXT, and for a while it seemed like he was destined to kind of carry the NXT flag.
Which he
But then
has.
as he kept getting more and more popular, yeah, you're right, he has. But as he kept getting more and more popular, it's just kind of become apparent that this guy's ready for the main stage. And, he has that crazy entrance during pay-per-views. And, hell, it might go on too long, but it's cool. He has this crazy light show and special effects and everything. So when he comes to the main roster, there's a couple of schools of thought out there. Right now, the Bullet Club has invaded WWE, and we'll get to that in a little bit when we talk about the Cena and Bullet Club promo. But there's the idea out there that the Bullet Club will reunite. That was Finn Balor, AJ Styles, Gallows, and Anderson. That was a big faction in New Japan Pro Wrestling, and they killed that whole promotion. They were the guys that carried every show and sold out everywhere. But to me, I would wait to do that. Anytime there's a lot of momentum in wrestling towards a single idea, and there's a lot of thought, hey, let's just do that because that's the easiest way to do it. It seems like Vince or creative or whoever you want to say swerves it a little bit. They try to go somewhere else. Obviously, however he gets positioned right when he comes up is going to be dependent on if they need a brand leading face or a brand leading heel. So my thought would be to try to get him in there originally with a guy he's got some history with. Whichever brand is going to be younger between SmackDown and Raw, he would probably go there and either have a history or have a feud with Kevin Owens, who can carry anybody in a feud and make it the most compelling thing on an episode, or a Sami Zayn if he's going to be a heel, and just let those two guys who are two of the best, I'd say 3 or 4 workers in the company right now, have these incredible matches, and you wouldn't even need too many promos with the matches they would put on.
I don't think that's a bad idea because I would love to see Balor and Owens or Balor and Zayn. But I want to see the Bullet Club reunion like everybody else. So a crazy idea that I came up with, because you said we wanted a fantasy book, so I went pretty hard on the fantasy part, where the Money in the Bank ladder match was described as 7 people, and then they said, 7 people, and then last week they're like, 6 people. So people are like, what's going on? Where happened to the 7th person? I say have the 7th person be Finn Balor. People would go insane. It's not till next weekend, so he gets plenty of time to rest from his big cage match with Joe. Have him come in, have him win it. Whoever wins between Rollins and Reigns that night, have him cash in that night, and then have Gallows and Anderson win the tag titles that night, and then the next night on Raw, have the club just attack Miz, who might be back by then, I don't know, and have Miz somehow get the IC title to AJ Styles, and just go full Evolution style, where the club now has all the gold, and they just run roughshod through the entire WWE.
You weren't kidding about the fantasy. Here's my thing on that. Okay, so
I went hard.
You reunite Balor and the Bullet Club. That's going to be a huge pop in and of itself, gold or not. To have Rollins or Reigns, whoever wins that match, to have the cash in that night. That's probably the biggest stretch in your argument. I could see everything else.
It's only been done once before.
It's been done once before, and they know that an average Raw draws about 3 million people at some point in the show. An average NXT will draw 1 million views on their WWE network. So to have Balor show up the first night and then become champion would be a tough sell, just because 2/3 of your normal audience might not know.
It would be a tough sell to your casual fans. I mean, your hardcore fans obviously know NXT and know Balor from other places, so they wouldn't be too upset with it, I feel. But I understand what you mean.
True. It's more of an issue of at some point Finn Balor is going to be a long-time WWE champion. that is far like that is booked already. How he ends up getting there is going to be the interesting part. But the guy has so much talent. He needs a little promo work, but it seems like a lot of those NXT guys do because NXT's promo structure with just that college like atmosphere, just they get a little bit of leeway and it doesn't have to be as polished to get the same pops.
I feel the same way.
But when he's going to be a maybe not Cena-esque long champion, but maybe a CM Punk type champion where he is just a absolute crowd favorite that as he's champion just continues to build. Pops get huger. Merch sells like crazy. I mean, I saw some of the merchandise they had for him at the house show I went to, and I wouldn't wear it, but I know 6-year-olds were killing to get it.
Yeah, the WWE merchandise is okay at best. I saw somebody on the internet get excited that Sami Zayn finally has a black T-shirt where that's where it finally feels like the WWE is supporting you, where he doesn't have that weird military green shirt they were selling anymore.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that one.
But we were talking about the Bullet Club, or just the club as they're known now. They had, and it wasn't even they, it was just AJ Styles and John Cena had quite the promo on Raw. If you haven't watched it, you gotta. John Cena.
We'll link. We're gonna link that promo to the Facebook post with this podcast because we'll describe it as best we can and say our favorite points, but you just gotta watch it to see just kind of what we're talking about and the emotion
exactly.
that comes out
John
of this.
Cena, for the first time in a long time, wasn't a cartoon character during the entire thing. He sounded like a man who was upset with another man and wanted to fight him, and wasn't like, "Bear, bear, 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 I'm John Cena, yay!" It was different, and I loved it.
And if that sounds pretty basic to you, welcome to John Cena's last 6 years in professional wrestling. It's been a weird
Cena
road
can
for
usually
that
give
man.
us one good promo per feud, but other than that, it's just the same old stuff. But I mean, it's what people don't like about Cena, which I understand. But maybe he's getting better, and it sounds like in the promo a lot they're dancing around mentioning that AJ Styles was in TNA for 13 years. I mean, they say all around the world, but all around the world was Orlando, Florida for a long, long time.
Very, very true. And it's interesting this newfound appreciation for what people did in other companies. And it happens when you've got all these phenomenal workers, not to use AJ's word, but all these incredible professional wrestlers that then come to WWE and finally get on that giant distribution scale. And you're right. I mean, they haven't acknowledged the fact that he was the best TNA wrestler there pretty much ever was or probably ever will be. And they probably never will. They'll keep sticking with they did it all around the world or they knew each other from Japan. But that's kind of part and parcel to Vince WWE after the Monday Night Wars.
Yeah, Vince would not, even though he bought WCW, they did a WCW invasion angle. 3 years after they bought WCW, you weren't allowed to talk about WCW all of a sudden.
No, it wasn't until the network that it became cool again.
And
but getting back to
that Styles and Cena promo felt so real because Styles kept bringing up guys like you bury guys like me, and he brought up shovels at one point, which he's not wrong.
Exactly. That was the thing that really just hooked me. And I know all the professional backstory of how Styles got here, and then Cena's been WWE's guy for almost 2 decades now. But this promo had so much seemingly real heat, and that's what makes a good promo. I don't know if Styles actually thinks that Cena buries guys, but he made me feel like he did, and that's what the essence of professional wrestling and mic work is. It doesn't matter if you actually believe it or not. Make people think you do.
Exactly.
And my favorite line in all of it, and you mentioned Cena called them the Bullet Club, and that had to have been off script, because I can't imagine WWE has the rights from New Japan to call them that. But
No, if that's anybody but John Cena, they
oh, they're
get in
suspended.
big trouble.
Yeah, they're probably off camera next week. But my favorite line after that line from Cena that I think kind of tips Styles off to, hey, we can go off script here a little bit because this is just getting so much pop from the crowd right now. Styles' line about the movies Cena's been in. Essentially what he says is, you're good in movies. Well, you're good in movies that you're a cameo in, not that you star in. Just a good shot at Cena's up and down acting career, let's say. But those movies that he starred in, like The Marine, those are WWE movies. Like, the WWE produced those movies. I can't imagine they were thrilled with Styles basically crapping on their own product.
No, Vince couldn't be happy about that. But with all due respect, I don't think WWE Studios has made a good movie yet.
You telling me that 12 rounds with that weird British Australian guy being like, "Hello, Danny," every 2 seconds wasn't good?
Are they up to 12 rounds 3 now? Isn't
yeah,
Dean Ambrose in 12 rounds
like
3?
12 rounds 2.5.
30 rounds. That's too much.
Oh, man.
Is there anything else you want to talk about?
I'm good, man. We hit our
too.
big ones and got to talk about that epic promo. We'll put that up on everywhere that we post this, Facebook and Twitter and everything.
As much as we can. We don't want to get sued 2 episodes in and be done.
True.
Tell the people where they can find us.
Okay. You can find us on Twitter. Fat Guys N, like Nancy, N Friends. That's the Twitter handle. You can email us at fatguysandfriends, spell out and there, at gmail.com. And on Facebook, Fat Guys and Friends. Like our page, share our posts when we put out the podcasts. And we're going to keep this rolling here. Possibly get another one this weekend, if not early next week. Maybe some type of Raw review. Keep talking about the finals. We should be keeping this up.
We're just 2 fat guys trying to make a name for ourselves.
That's right.
Had a lot of fun, Bart.
You too, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks, people.